what I hear you saying is that the founding fathers had something positive to give. Now, I have been noticing on my social media timelines that everyone is kind of becoming a bit of a far left abolitionist, right? In the sense that there is an argument that the entire country, the entire makeup, the foundation, the founding fathers, all of it is a hot, holy mess that needs to just be completely destroyed. And we have to start back up again. And it sounds like what you're saying is that no, there are some systems and things that were put in place by some men. And in fact, you just told me that slaveholder George Washington was a solid leader, right? There are some people out here that I feel like would watch this and would say, man, Orlan, I can't even get to George Washington being a solid leader because I'm hung up on the fact he was a slave owner. Now, I'm bringing this up, Saints, because I find that this is happening within our current leadership as well, right? So if we're looking at Biden and Harris, we are now seeing so many arguments against their appointment because, Biden likes to sniff little girls' hair. He clearly likes giving massages and is just a very kind of that like your old creepy uncle that people
so they say.
So they say he's a little uncomfortable on camera. And then Kamala Harris, the sister who went on live DNC last night, gave the AKAs a shout out. The Divine Nine HBCUs, and her whole outro music was Mary J. Blige. Like that chick is the same chick who, according to some people, as a DA, literally put in policies that were against Black people that have perpetuated police brutality and mass incarceration. So how do we as a country, how do we as voters navigate this space of having leadership that, quite frankly, is extremely problematic on many levels and rarely does things that benefit Black people as a whole? But instead, we really only see that maybe this is a benefit to the country as a whole, but this hasn't touched Black people. How is this impacting Black people? Why does it? Come on, talk to me about this.
Well, I'm going to just do this briefly. And let me just, all leadership is flawed. All leadership is flawed at every level, at every organization, at every institution. Nobody's going to show up with the perfect package or the complete package. So if we're looking for that, then we all need to stay home because that's not there. Secondarily, the importance of being a leader within a certain particular job. You have to come with a certain set of gifts. You have to come with a certain set of abilities, but you also will come with a certain set of what I would call deficiencies. And part of the job of a great leader is to bring others in to help you with your deficiencies. George Washington clearly had problems in terms of what was going on in terms of slavery, but at the time, that was America. That was what America stood for. When George Washington was elected president, only 6% of the population was allowed to vote. So he became president off of 6% of the population because if you weren't a landowner and you weren't a 25-year-old white man, you couldn't vote. So the realities of who you end up with have much more to do with the pool of who gets to choose. So that's why I think it's so important what Garrison and Simone were talking about, and also Deborah. We want the pool to be the type of pool that will make a choice that's more reflective of America. George Washington was reflective of America at that time. And what we want is, in my opinion, an environment where the leaders are reflective of America. And guess what? Sometimes what America reflects, I don't like. But that's also who we are. I want to get biblical, but I think the Apostle Paul says the good that I thought I was going to do, I never do. And the evil I thought I would never do, that's what I do. So that's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, I would love to jump in there as well and introduce a word into our conversation today, and it's anachronism. It's when we judge the past based on the present. And that is often the case with a lot of these, honestly, disinformation campaigns that are being levied against people like Senator Harris. When she was a DA, a prosecutor in California, the things that she was doing, they were progressive for the time. She's had a number of witnesses come forward, those who worked with her at the time, and said that she was actually one of the most progressive prosecutors in the state at the time. But times have changed. And now we look back on that with skepticism. We look askance at some of the things that she did then, because we're like, whoa, we wouldn't do that today. But we have to be careful not to judge the past based on where we are today. The same thing applies in many ways with former Senator Joe Biden when he was authoring the crime bill at the time. He had large support within the Black community for those bills. There were people who thought, no, we need to crack down. There were those within our communities who said, no, we need to do something about this. And now we look back with clarity, and we see how it played out, and we say, man, this was wrong. This was not right. It shouldn't have happened. And that's an appropriate response today. But we have to be careful not to judge the past based on where, honestly, God has brought us, the way that God has progressed society and our understanding of one another. Today, we should not look back and judge people in a way that they were in the past. Think about the way that Dr. King says Negro and other leaders at the time used words that today we will be offended at the usage of those terms. But we recognize that times change, our understanding changes, and that's okay. That's a good thing.
And can I add to that, I'm glad we've gotten some of those mistakes out of the way. We can learn from them, right? And as we look back, we say, oh, that was not the approach. And we've actually learned from the way that things have panned out, the way that certain systems actually affect communities, right? The crime bill, the way that over-policing Black communities led to over-arresting, led to over-criminalizing, led to mass incarceration. So we've seen how systems play out in our modern American world and society in a way that allows us to make more informed decisions. I also want to add in there that, when we're looking at candidates, we have to take a fuller view of what they actually stand for. For example, Kamala Harris is against mandatory minimums on a federal level. That's a major policy decision law that really disparately affects Black communities, right? And she's against privatized prisons. That's another hot topic. She's against the death penalty. That's another issue. So there are a lot of things that are progressive about these candidates that we kind of, because we get hung up on a couple decisions that were made that we don't agree with, and understandably so, that we are so passionate about those things. But looking forward, playing the long game, like we kind of talked about earlier, we have to look at, okay, but have they learned from their mistakes? And are they willing to do things differently going forward? And if the answer is yes, then I think we have a system in which we can work and we can actually formulate things going forward. We would actually should be concerned if they didn't do anything during their time. That means they're not a mover and they're not a shaker and they don't care about change. They may have made the wrong decisions, but we have to look at their desire to make a change in communities, to see things turn around and say, okay, at least they're willing to move and to shake. Let's work on how. Let's work on who's informing them. Let's work on getting people out there who have progressive and positive Black community and other marginalized community facing policies so that we can move forward.